Welcome aboard for another episode of Sales Pipeline Radio. Pick up your board and swim out into the sales pipeline as it curls up over the horizon. Not going to do it today. A little overcast down here in normally sunny Southern California.
Is everybody okay? I mean, like, is he...
We're having some intervention. They've got teams in place, to counsel people here. It's not as bad as it could be, but thanks. We practice for these overcast days, and we have response teams in place.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on another episode of Sales Pipeline Radio. We are here every Thursday live at 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern. If you're joining us live, which I know many people do, we're very excited to have you. And if you're joining us from the podcast, thank you very much for subscribing. If you're interested in subscribing, you like what you hear today, you can join us every week at your convenience, on demand, at Google Play and the iTunes Store. And speaking of on demand, Paul, we are available past, present, future. Every episode is available at salespipelineradio.com. We are featuring every week some of the best and brightest minds in B2B sales and marketing. Today is no different. Very excited to have with us Jim Ninivaggi. He is the Chief Readiness Officer at Brainshark. He has been involved in sales enablement, sales readiness for many, many years. He was the Service Director for Sales Enablement Strategies for almost 6 years at SiriusDecisions. We're super excited to have him. So, Jim, thanks very much for joining us today.
Hey, Matt. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. One of the smartest guys in sales enablement, one of the sharpest dressers in B2B. And Jim, I mean, you literally have had a front row seat to the evolution and growth of sales enablement over the past several years. I mean, I was joking with someone the other day that it wasn't that long ago when you really couldn't even use the term sales enablement like in marketing material because no one knew what that was. And now all of a sudden, it is a major category that is becoming close to table stakes for modern B2B companies. And before we go too much further, give us a definition of what you consider sales enablement to be. Like, what are the key components, whether or not someone calls it sales enablement, whether or not they describe it that way internally, what are the components that go into it that people need to be focused on, and what is the desired outcome from those efforts?
I think, there are a gazillion definitions out there
Yeah.
on sales enablement. And I'm a pretty simple guy, so I keep mine pretty simple, which is it's ensuring that a salesperson, business development rep, it could be a customer success manager, but ensuring that that salesperson is showing up for every customer interaction, whether that interaction is happening via email, on social, over the phone, via web conference, or face-to-face, that rep shows up with the knowledge, the skills, and the assets that will make that interaction impactful to the buyer and hopefully move an opportunity forward. That's my definition of enablement. And if you kind of work backwards from there, right, I talked about that salesperson showing up with knowledge and skills. That typically means that, hey, we've got to make sure that these salespeople are well trained and that we have a continuous learning strategy to ensure that they show up with the latest knowledge about our competitors and about our products and about the marketplace. I also talked about assets, and that's all about having the right content and presenting that content in a way that is relevant and impactful for that particular interaction. So I run enablement here at Brainshark, and I feel my job is to ensure that when a buyer leaves an interaction with a salesperson from Brainshark, even if they don't buy from us, although I hope they always do, they say, you know what, that was time well spent. And that was a salesperson that I'd hired in my own organization. That, to me, is ultimately my job at Brainshark. All the other stuff as well in terms of shortening sales cycles and improving win rates and all that good stuff. But ultimately, the thing that I really have most control over is ensuring that our reps are showing up ready to rock and roll for that particular interaction.
Well, we unfortunately are out of time. We got a lot more we could keep going for days. We could talk about a lot of different topics, but really appreciate our time with Jim Ninivaggi. He's the Sales Readiness Officer at Brainshark. If you like this conversation, I want to make sure others in your organization listen to it. You will have access to this on demand up on not only the podcast feed on iTunes Store and Google Play, but up on demand at salespipelineradio.com. Paul, the sun's coming. I apologize for the overcast today, but our great guests in flip-flops and polo shirts maybe give you inspiration. We'll not be around the corner. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. For my great producer, Paul, this is Matt Heinz. We'll see you next week. Sales Pipeline Radio.
You've been tuned to another episode of Sales Pipeline Radio, brought to you by the good folks at Heinz Marketing.